mean, I've done that.
Before CGI, yeah.
Yeah, I did CGI on a later film, and you don't do anything. It's all.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I had to do this, and then.
But what we decided was, with the effects, that he would tear his skin off to reveal a wolf underneath him. Yeah, and so you spent many hours tearing your skin.
It wasn't a real wolf. I tore it off, and there was my own face underneath, wasn't it?
Well, there was you. We had constructed this thing that went like that and came out.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. It was a big hit.
It's quite a big hit. The movie, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but it was very exciting, to go with. That was a good script, and.
We did this effect on Stephen tearing his face off and blah blah blah, and turning into a wolf and all that, and then we had to turn him back into a human being, and I had the idea that the new husband grabs an axe and chops off this wolf's head, and it falls into a vat of milk. Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
And then up pops Mr. Rea's face, which was far simpler than tearing off the face or any of that kind of nonsense.
Well, it wasn't my real face.
I know, it was a prosthetic dummy of your face. Yeah, and your eyebrows met in the middle, do you remember? Yeah. You don't trust a man whose eyebrows meet in the middle.
My eyebrows don't meet in the middle.
They did then.
No. It was good. It was good. I had to, do a lot of after, screaming and howling like a wolf.
You had to do a lot. Yes, that was good. Well, I mean, horror movies and horror movies are great, and movies of fantasy are great because you can construct the reality, you can construct the landscape. That's.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it seems the only kind of movies that are having any kind of success are horror movies. The entire genre of horror seems to be driving anyone who's going to the cinema now or going to see those. But it was fun to do that, and it was kind of.
Well, it was fun. It was very elegant. It was an elegant film, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And
I think so. Yeah.
And then, and then do you want to go on? It's a good few years. You did some movies.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
I did more without you. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did Mona Lisa. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was good. Bob Hoskins.
Yeah. Then I did a movie called High Spirits. And then I did a movie called We're No Wayne. Then I did The Crying Game. You weren't in The Miracle, were you? No, don't.
No, I was in The Crying.
And then I had written after I had written the script for Angel. Yeah. I wrote a little outline of what I would call the most kind of tedious kind of presumption in the world, the terrorist on the run. There have been so many movies, haven't there, about the terrorist on the run. Anyway, I had this idea about making a story, about an IRA activist who kidnaps a black British soldier, and has to keep him, a series of negotiations go on, has to guard him, and something like the Stockholm Syndrome exchange of emotional attachment happens, and then he goes to London to find his, and the soldier says to him, I know I'm going to die, I know you're going to kill me, and Fergus, your character's called Fergus, do you remember?
Yeah.
Fergus says, no you're not, he says, look, I'm not a fucking idiot, I know I'm going to die, and he says, I want you to see this woman, see my wife, and see that she's okay, and tell her I was thinking of her, which sounds like a very sentimental, kind of rather interesting story, isn't it? Yeah. But every time I began to write the first third of the script, and every time I came to London, it got boring. It just got realistic somehow. And Stephen's character goes to this hairdresser and gets his hair cut from this woman who doesn't know that he's been responsible for the death of her lover, her husband. And it just became kind of a movie that anybody else could have made for some reason. I don't know why. Remember they were making a lot of quasi-political movies at the time?
Yeah.
In London, yeah. And then one day I thought, I don't know why I thought of it. It must have been something.
Don't tell them.
I thought, what if this character was actually male? Was what we now would call a trans character. At the time I called her a transvestite, I think. Sorry, my mic is falling off me. And I called you up, didn't I? I said, what if I did this?
Oh, no. No, you told I sat while you told me the story.
Did I?
Your story.
Really? Where? At the house up there?
No, it was in London, I think.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
And yeah, and no, and it came to the bit. I always remember it actually. You said it just came to the bit. You said, and she's a man.
Mm.
And I said, to my eternal credit, I'll do it.
But once that, I mean, you must. I found it interesting because once I'd made that change, the whole scene of captivity became something totally different. You know, I mean, you had to look after this guy like a, you know, a captive, I suppose. He was handcuffed. He couldn't go to the toilet. So suddenly, Stephen, the character Fergus, has to unzip him. He has to take out his dick. Excuse my language.
You can say penis.
Penis, okay. He has to take out his penis. He not only that, but has to hold him and lean him forward so he doesn't piss all over his pants, kind of thing. And suddenly the weird intimacy developed between the situation that actually has been in many Irish drama. You know, the same situation was in Frank O'Connor's Guest of the Nation. It was in Brendan Behan's Unreal, which
The hostage,
yeah. And but suddenly the situation, which actually is quite familiar from Irish dramaturgy, becomes totally different, you know. And suddenly your character is forced into a journey where he has to question every aspect of himself. Anyway, to your eternal credit, you said yes, you did.
No, and there's the kind of big important moment which I think is one of the incredible moments that I've ever done in cinema, where he says to him or they meet and says, I'm leaving, I don't want to see you anymore. And she says, why? And he says, because you're a man. And so she says, okay, just one thing before you go, kiss me. And he kisses her, and he loves her.
Yeah, he did.
You know, and
Well, how could he not? How could he not? Particularly the way Jay Davison played the part, you know.
well, I thought it was just so. The one thing in gender change and everything you don't take into account is actually maybe love the person, you know, and the free.
So should we do a sequel, shall we? I mean, how long was your character? What kind of jail term was he serving? Yeah. I can't come out of Wormwood Scrubs.
Well, you know, he'd been out ages ago. The Good Friday Agreement would have
That's a good idea, the Good Friday Agreement. Out he comes. All muscled up now, covered in tattoos.
No, it's an incredibly moving film for that reason, you know, and because, you know, you're good about human stuff, you know, you're not just a sensation, it's...
No, I know,
No, you are, and that's what makes it different, you know.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I suppose what's interesting is that, you know, what's difficult is always what's most interesting. What's challenging is always somehow what reaches audiences.
Well, tell me if I'm right about this, but I think of it in a way, because the English weren't keen on things that involved the IRA, you know, and they didn't really want to do it. They showed to screen it. No. And then it went to America, and because the Americans don't give a damn about the IRA, if it's about sex, they love it. So it was a huge hit.
Well, it wasn't. It was a little bit more complicated than that. Because it was financed from Britain, basically, Stephen. You know, I mean.
I know, but that was decent art people.
Yeah, I know. And then, well, I suppose because Stephen Woolley did release the movie in England and Canada, it didn't do great, and then it began to play in festivals in Toronto and Telluride and all that, and Harvey Weinstein, he who shall not be named, released it. As the film with a secret, which annoyed a lot of people, but it became this big hit, and you know, and it was, I suppose in a strange way it changed the language in a way, didn't it? I mean, it enabled a lot of other kind of, you know, kind of examinations of identity to be spoken about.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a time, I don't think there were gender studies kind of courses in most American universities. I could be corrected on that, but I don't think there were. Anyway, it was a great journey to do, yeah. And then I made a movie called Interview with the Vampire, yeah. And I've always found that if I have a particularly challenging role, I can call on Steve. And your character was called Santiago, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is Interview with the Vampire was a huge, big movie, and it basically was two vampires bitching about each other through eternity. Yeah. And they started punishing each other. It's kind of a sadomasochistic relationship between Lestat and Louis in New Orleans. Then they moved to Paris, yeah, and then they moved back to New Orleans, but it went through periods, yeah. So when they came to Paris, I had to elaborate and kind of invent this form of theatre, because they went to a thing that was called Theatre Les Vampires. Was it called something like that? Yeah. Or the Theatre of the Vampires. Anyway, I invented this incredibly theatrical vampire who was like a stage manager of all these little kind of vignettes on a stage, and I wrote it actually in verse, yeah. You know, because I don't know why, because I thought it'd be fun to actually have kind of rhyming verse in a movie, and it'd be fun to have a character who spoke in rhyming verse who actually was a vampire. So I asked you to play it, yeah? And I can't think of anybody else who could have delivered the kind of extravagance and the rather evil and the intelligence of that part. I think you began to look into